Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are looking at our favorite video that we love to bring you guys each and every day, now including this weekend slate here on Saturday, where we have 4 games to choose on. It's our player props video. Like I mentioned, 4 games today on the slate to choose from. So I think we got some pretty good options here. We continue to feel pretty hot with these player props as we continue along. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page to continue to grab all those videos with us as we continue to bring them to you every single day of this NBA postseason. Also want to head to thelines.com. That's where we have our NBA player props tool there, so you can make sure you're getting the best lines and juice available on all of these player props as you are line shopping them. Also head to play.thelines.com. That's where we had the opportunity for you guys to get a $25 Amazon gift card. If you enter into that NBA Daily Pick'em Challenge and get all of those correct, we will send that over to you. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to ftpicks.com or dkpicks.com. Find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight's play props. Nate, let's get into it.
Yeah, I'm opening with Kevin Durant, but it's not with his traditional props. I'm not taking the 30 points at minus 122 necessarily, which is absurd to note that he's getting that kind of odds after he had a nightmare series in Boston so far with an 88 offensive rating. But, you know, they're looking at the numbers. His usage rate is still 35%. He still had 27 points with the worst playoff game of his life because he had 18 free throws. You know, if the Celtics are going to be that physical with them on the road, he's probably going to go to the free throw line a lot as well. But I mean, so that's why I'm looking at KD to be the top scorer in this game at plus 175. Probably means he'll get over 30 points, but why not get the extra juice there? I guess he's competing with Kyrie on that front. But this being a night game, Josh, that means Kyrie could be a little low on energy. And I mean, it's more about Durant, just his name being dragged through the mud a little bit after these 2 games. I mean, he's still, y'all know who he is. And in the 2021 playoffs, it's just, you know, it's not like he had a rapid decline from there. He averaged 34 points per game, 51-40 splits. That was with nobody around to really threaten the rest of the defense because nobody was healthy. He's had 2 spike games against Boston in the regular season where he had 37 and 29 points. And that's where I get to my bet that I like here because he had 7 threes in those 2 games, 7 for 13. And if they're going to be physical with him like that, I think we'll see more of the Durant brings it up, you know, so he doesn't have to get chucked off the ball, does that crossover and just pulls. And I think he'll pull 8 to 10 threes at least. And he's a 40% 3-point shooter at home in the last 8 seasons for him. So you're getting plus 150 for him to hit 3 of those threes. And I really like the odds there rather than say, you know, if we're so expecting him to get 30, he's probably going to mix in a few threes here, especially if the other team's going to be that physical with him when he drives.
Yeah, I mean, he got a ton of points off free throws in Boston, but I think he'll have the ability to keep shooting, and it's Kevin Durant. I'm not worried about that at all in a game where you consider his usage rate to expect it to be in the 30s for sure, if not closer to 40. So I'm 100% with you on the threes. I like the top score one. I think it's a fun one, to be honest. And at plus 175 seems like good odds to be Kevin Durant. So I'm with you on that, but I still get scared off by the 30.5 points just because we haven't seen that level of KD yet. Hopefully we'll see it next game so that this can continue to be a fun series. I am going to be a crusty curmudgeon in this version of the player props. And I'm going to start with an under for the Stifle Tower, as he's known, Rudy Gobert. Definitely under the under 13.5 points. I don't know if you're scared of that a little bit more than the rebounds. It's interesting because the rebounds are 14.5. I like the under there as well. Just because I also think, I don't think he's going to come off the floor. He played 29 minutes in that last game, which is not that many. I mean, he's in the regular season, he's averaging a bit more than that. So, you know, I think there was a bit of Quinn Snyder realizing he needed to take Rudy off based on the fact that the guy's in there for defense, but in this, you know, he's got 128 defensive rating or something in that last game. And, you know, you mentioned in the game video, the ridiculous stat that he had a 211 offensive rating because he only took 6 shots and made them. But, you know, then he was a minus 16, 26, whatever it was on the floor while he was out there because he's not doing his job on defense and he's not making a big enough impact on offense. I don't really quite understand how it's 13.5 points for his line there. He's not doing that in this game. I don't really need to look at anything in terms of how he plays against Dallas in the regular season. It's a different game right now, and his inability to impact it is clear. So under 15 boards or under 14 points, however you want to mix it up, I'm with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's about targeting a lack of playing time, really, more than anything, because the Jazz have to adjust here. Maybe they'll try to adjust with Gobert on the floor and punish the Mavs on the other end by running more lob action for him, which is basically how he got those 6 field goals. That's why I'm a little more scared of the points, because I do think there's a world in which that's how Quinn Snyder adjusts. I also think there's a world in which he plays him less than 29 minutes because he's a negative 26 in these last 2 games. Maxi Kleber's 12 for 16 from 3 with Rudy mostly guarding him. And he might have to go small and play and just bench the 3-time defensive player of the year, I guess it is, who's just been negated in the playoffs yet again. I'm going to go with OG Anunoby again. Totally called this one. Had him at 17.5 points for the last game. He goes for 26, 5, and 4 on a 123 offensive rating. And now his points prop is only one higher at 18.5. PRA is the exact same, which he cruised past as well. Look, Fred VanVleet is not healthy. Gary Trent still dealing with an illness. And Pascal Siakam just suddenly, I mean, the Sixers doubled him in the second half, and he didn't score. And OG was like, all right, I'll take over. I pointed out how his usage rate was really damn low as he came back from injury himself in early February. 17% usage rate, so under 15 points per game. But now in this series, usage rate is up around 25%, and he's averaging 24.5 points per game. He's seeing a lot of Danny Green on him, and will continue to see that because Matisse Thybulle's ineligible to play here in Toronto. And the Philly defense has just looked kind of bad at every turn. I mean, they're not giving up a ton of points because the pace is down so far in Toronto, but in the half court, Toronto has very limited guys who can just create the way Anunoby can. And he's creating his shots for himself and getting into the lane. Had 4 threes in both last 2 games. I like him to keep filling it up as basically their number one option if you're going to double Spicy P.
Yeah, Spicy P, definitely. And there's who else at this point? And I love the fact that Matisse Thybulle can't travel as he's trying to figure out, avoiding the vaccine, but he's not allowed to play in Toronto. So I love the opportunities that OG is getting, especially with a lack of options now for Toronto, who we don't necessarily feel comfortable betting against as far as dead in the water here. And if you do think that they're going to, at the very least, make this competitive again, it still can go under, and OG can get well over 19 points, as I think he will. I also do love adding the points, the rebounds and assists in that one for him as well, which are only basically at 9 more of those combined, 9 rebounds and boards that he needs, and assists that he needs to get. I feel good about those as well there. So going back to my curmudgeon-y ways, as I mentioned, Cat, not going out on a limb here, am I to say that he's likely to get another under? I think you are right, and I'm speaking directly to you, Nate. You are right to be scared of going under at the points a little more than you're scared of the boards. Cat doesn't rebound as much as you might think anyway, to be honest, especially towards the end of the season, and against a very, very good rebounding team, basically the best rebounding team in the league, although things are a little different when you don't have Steven Adams out there. But you still have some combination of Bane, Clark, Tillman, and Slow-Mo, who all are very, very, very good rebounders and play bigger than they even might be. I think there's still plenty of reason to like him to go under 10.5 rebounds, which gets you even money there. Or you could talk about those points at 24.5. The only reason to be scared is because he only had 4 shot attempts, and I'm sure Cat has at least seen one headline or has at least been told by one person that that's too little and too few, and he can't take that few if he wants to to be considered a star. What's that?
Next question.
Yeah,
that's what somebody told him that.
Yeah. Totally. He next questioned somebody. I couldn't believe that. I was like, man, I feel like it's the first one I've seen in the playoffs. Usually we get like a good 6 or 7 next questions in the playoffs. Cat came with it. It wasn't a dumb question, but it was like, yo, come on, man. Like, yeah, exactly. So it's been brought to his attention. Exactly to your point. I think the rebounds is not only is it. I actually think it might be a safer bet to go under for the rebounds, under 11, and it's also better odds. So why the heck not, right?
Yeah, I would combine everything and go under 38.5 PRA too.
Great.
Because he's not a playmaker at this point in his career. He's going to be he's still so young and brash that he's probably going to go out there and try to force things. I don't know if that means he'll wind up in foul trouble again. I don't know if he'll turn it over, but he's probably not going to be under control making plays for his teammates. And Memphis is the number one rebound rate, even slightly better on the road. They're not going to really lose anything, I don't think, without Adams, because those guys, Clark and Tillman, can box out and keep Cat off the glass at least. So I like under with the plus 100 here, just him to get under those rebounds and then probably play it safe with under his total stat line. Even though I do think he'll bounce back and really try to get those 20, 25 points, definitely a good chance he still falls short of that, because as much as you want it, sometimes the other team just has the personnel to stop you.
Agreed. Yeah. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, actually, I think I might kind of want to just take the rebounds and not the points and follow along with you there. Even though I was a little bit more bullish on the points before you got into my head about it. So I'm with you. Either one of them are fine, but the rebounds better odds and feel a bit safer too. So
yeah, starting with the Sixers Raptors game. This is probably the least confident game to bet on because it's a 3-0 situation and you never know if somebody's going to lay down. But I think Toronto, that building is still pretty wild, even on a Saturday afternoon. Those Canucks, they get drunk early. I think Toronto is going to win Game 4. I think they're going to force this back to Philly. I think it's more about the fact that Philly wouldn't really care if it goes back to Philly. I mean, Joel Embiid hit that shot, celebrated like it was a Game 7 winner. Just, because it's like, yes, we won the series, basically. Right. And now there's going to be some letdown. They didn't necessarily expect to win that game. They played awful. They had 18 assists and 22 turnovers. And they basically just lucked out. Siakam lost his talent down the stretch. I guess the Monstars got both him and Durant. 2.5. The second half in overtime, 0 points. Fred VanVleet, pretty much no points in that span as well. They both finished with 12. But OG, as we call him, player props, coming through with 26. Gary Trent Jr. playing through the illness with 25.
Also called that.
And they combined for 25 down the stretch to keep Toronto in it.
Yeah.
There's no way I'm taking it over in this game with the pace slowing down in Toronto from 88 to 84. Ridiculous, going way under even with overtime. They've now gone under in 9 of their last 12 home games with the Sixers. Still have no answer for Embiid, especially without Scotty Barnes. There's now 3 straight games he's had 31 plus when Barnes is out of the lineup. But the Raptors, solid defense everywhere else. James Harden still not threatening defenses to a huge degree. So I think Toronto can hang in here. Philly, like I said, the letdown factor, 25 and 28 against the spread after a win this season. Only 27 and 31 as favorites. And then after that initial 5-game honeymoon with James Harden, 4 and 11 against the spread as favorites to end the regular season. They got to let up at some point here. And Toronto, if you're going to turn the ball over like that against Toronto, more of those are going to result in a negative the other way. It's stunning that the Raptors weren't able to capitalize with more transition points off that, because that's what they do.
Yeah.
And also pretty stunning that Siakam just went completely cold.
Yeah.
I guess the doubles on him let OG go off, but he has some great numbers against Philly all season. They beat him 3 times in the regular season. I just think they'll get one game here for pride, at least.
Yeah, well, I'll just give you guys a secret too. If you think this is going 5, well, I guess, whatever. If you think this is going 5, then you get a little bit a juice here to sort of put some extra juice behind that money line, if you will, in this game, right? Because it's plus 130 for the Raptors to win this game. If you bet the Philly to win this game the series in 5, and essentially bet them to win this game and lose the next one, you get plus 210 on your money on FanDuel. So,
and if you go real bold and say this will go 6 games, plus 1,400. Just saying.
That's a huge jump, right? Just that one game, because you got to figure, like, Joel Embiid was essentially saying, yes, we won this game in 5, is what he, right? Like, it kind of feels like that's what he was saying when he was celebrating after that incredible shot, to your points. I have no desire to bet an over on this game. I wouldn't even be mad at, I think anybody was crazy for betting under 213.5. I mean, this is the type of series we have. This is what Toronto also does at home. And like you said, this series and the shot that Toronto had was predicated on Philly turning the ball over, not getting back in transition on defense, because you have got Joel crashing the offensive boards and you have James Harden who doesn't get back on defense. And so, you expect that to be a huge advantage and a huge sort of net value perspective, portion of the game for the Raptors, especially at home. They kind of got what they needed from Philly at home. They took the commanding lead. But yeah, Fred VanVleet's hurt. And we said it before game 2. He came out in game 2 firing. He got them out to like a 13-0 lead or whatever it was. But, from 15-2, there's some crazy lead for Toronto at the beginning of the game before Philly just came storming back really quickly. And Fred VanVleet didn't have the capacity to maintain that level of play throughout the rest of that game. And he's really too big of an X factor for them, for him not to be able to play that well. They need 30-point games from him, or at least, putting up 24 and 9 assists or what have you, but they just need him creating points. And if he's not doing that, especially with Scotty Barnes not in there, we said it when Scotty Barnes went down, there was no way for them to keep pace with Philly once they lost that level of an offensive weapon.
Yeah, and Scotty's still doubtful to play in this one. I mean, he's got a long career ahead of him. I don't think they're going to push anything unless they are able to force game 5 or maybe 6. I just want to bring up again the huge discrepancy in odds at FanDuel, where for Toronto to cover or to force a game 6 is plus 730, but for this series to go 6 is plus 1400, which makes absolutely no sense because there's no way it can happen right with the Sixers forcing 6. But I mean, that you're going out on a big limb if you think Toronto will win that game and win in Philly. Although they did, kind of shut down that Sixers offense in a regular season meeting, the shine coming off a little bit with the Harden thing in the series as it did in the regular season. And I mean, yeah, you see it follow nothing more than the turnovers from 3 in game 1 to 22 in game 3. I'm not really willing to bank on a team winning when they commit more turnovers than assists. Yeah.
Got the Mavs and the Jazz in the Western Conference, the 4-5, 2-1. Probably surprising to some, not to Nate, who bet on this series before it even began, with the Mavs not even knowing if Luka would play, which is the situation we find ourselves in right now, where we don't know necessarily. He's a game time decision. But as you sort of mentioned to me earlier, it doesn't necessarily matter if he does play at this point, because they have Jalen Michael Jordan Brunson on their team. And the man has gone completely ballistic. It feels like he's getting just as much credit as there is blame being placed on Utah's inability to stop him. And Rudy Gobert's really, really bad defensive rating for a 3-time defensive player of the year. So what do we do here in game 4? Do the Jazz have any chutzpah? Are they going to come with anything and keep this thing close, or are we going to look at 3-1 going back to Dallas?
If they do, it's going to be because their offense is still cooking. And it was in game 3 with Donovan Mitchell still being unstoppable, even if nobody else can really consistently get their own shot, which is why I love the over again. I mean, we had this in game 1. Mavs to cover and over, and it flopped. Let's be real. I mean, yeah, Brunson and Dinwiddie scored. Nobody else could get anything going for Dallas. But then Jason Kidd, who we are continuing to apologize to,
yes,
made great adjustments. Maybe he just gave Ty Lue a call and said, wait, how do you take Rudy Gobert out of the game? And it's pretty simple. You just put him on a 3-point shooter where he can't leave, or he'll get burned. And Maxi Kleber is that shooter. He is now 12 for 16 from 3 in these last 2 games, causing Rudy to post a 124 defensive rating and a minus 26. And the weirdest stat line I've ever seen from the last game, where he has a 211 offensive rating because he went 6 for 6 from the field for 15 points, but was a minus 16 in his 29 minutes. So he's almost unplayable if they're going to counter him in this way, and everybody on Dallas can shoot. So it's not like you can hide him on any shooter and dare them to beat you. So, Utah was a dreadful defensive team without Gobert, when he was out for a couple weeks in February. They were a 120 defensive rating, and Brunson is just eating Mike Conley alive. Love Mike Conley, but he is on the back nine here, and with a 93 offensive rating and a 124 defensive rating in his last two, he's getting completely outplayed by a younger, stronger lefty after his own heart. So how do we bet this game, Josh? I mean, Mavs money line and over plus 400. That's definitely worth a shot, because I mean, Utah, I don't know. They might lay down. They might just not have it. They might not have it with the X's and O's, this team. And the players starting to be like, all right, what everybody said is right. They have to break us up. This doesn't make sense. You can hedge that with the spread with Dallas +5, because I do think Utah will hold their own on offense, and you still get +260. Or you can just hammer this Mavs team total at 103, which we were a little hesitant to pull the trigger at 101 last game.
Yeah.
And they cruised past that. I mean, it wasn't even close. The Jazz have now gone over in 9 straight playoff games at home. So I think you like points here for sure, based on the X's and O's we mentioned. And I think the Mavs definitely have the advantage in terms of chess pieces right now.
Yeah, 100%. Love that this is still at 212. I was worried it was going to get up closer to 216, 217 even at this point. I feel like we've got enough games at this, 2 games in a row of offense, where in game 1, the only reason that game, stayed so terrible in terms of offensive output was a couple individual performances that just went so poorly. And really, Jalen Brunson and Spencer Dinwiddie both had terrible shooting games in game 1. Donnie Mitchell had 2 points at the half in game 1, and this ended at a 191 total, which isn't really close. It's not going to hit over in pretty much any line that gets set these days. But that was a fluke, is my point. I also am looking at the fact that there's other things that could have gone right for an over in games 2 and 3 that didn't. Spencer Dinwiddie specifically being bad on offense, being one of them in both those games, and just shooting in game 3 there, we're looking at 28% from the field, and in game 2, where we're looking at the same, pretty much about 28 or 29% from the field for him. Well, closer, 29.5% from the field. Whatever. Point is he's just missing a ton of shots, and some of them are at the rim. A lot of them are from deep, as he's gone now a combined like 2 for 12 from deep in games 2 and 3. And my point is Brunson's hot. He wasn't in game 1. He was in 2 and 3. Even if he's not in game 4, you're still waiting on a game from Dinwiddie that I believe is coming, because I don't care. I don't believe in this Utah Jazz defense wherever they are. That's why they've gone over, in 9 straight. It's not just their offense, which was at one point had 66 points with 4.5 minutes left in the third quarter last night. They ended the third quarter in 4.5 minutes, dropping 25 points, which is absurd for one team. So that's what Donnie does. He gets shot out of a cannon, and then all of a sudden, if anybody comes along with him, which Mike Conley is not, God bless him. Like you said, he's on the back 9. He's probably on like 17. So especially just for the level of play that he's used to from someone who's as quality as he's been in his career. Sad to see. Whatever. At this point, the over is really what we're talking about. In any way, shape, or form you want to hit it. I really like going back to the well on either of these team totals. I say I feel more comfortable with Dallas's team total at this point. I don't think there's a letdown coming from them on offense. And really what was surprising for me in game 1 was, we talked about how much faster they play with Dinwiddie since he's gotten there without Luka. Right. And that pace goes up by about 4 possessions per 100. And so, you really like to continue to see that. And we'll continue to see that in game 4 as well. It's not like Utah's game plan is predicated on stopping this team and slowing it down. They're still going to be trying to get their points. In fact, probably speed it up and hope that they can figure out a way to game plan around Jalen Brunson, which is why, once again, I think there's no way that Quinn Snyder can consider even keeping his job if Jalen Brunson has more than 25. If he gets 30 again, dude, it's no knock on Jalen. It's just you've got to game plan for him at this point, which leads me to feel good about some Spencer Dinwiddie props if you wanted to go that route.
Yeah, you can game plan for him. I don't know if they have the personnel to stop him.
Well, I'm just saying he's one-on-one at the top of the key every time, and then he gets into the lane, and then the double comes, and I'm like, you're doubling him when he's already past his first man. What's the point of that? Like,
for sure, yeah. I mean, Quinn Snyder as job security, I think, fair to just put that. But I mean, he does have some tough decisions. It's like, what side of history are you going to be on here? Are you going to go one game too late, putting Eric Pascal at the 5 and just saying we're going to outscore this team because they don't have Doncic? Or are you going to continue to stand by Rudy Gobert and put him out there and get screwed? And Jason Kidd taking subtle jabs at him in the post game where he just threw in a long answer like, oh, yeah, they got the ball to their playmaker, Rudy Gobert, a couple times. Just good. Yeah, the game is passing them by if you're a big center who can't put it on the floor, who can't make the other team pay for going small against you. I mean, he had a few lobs, again, 211 offensive rating for those 6 made field goals, but couldn't stay on the floor. So we're going to look at some unders with him as well, I'm sure. And definitely. If you want the series, it's interesting now. One of the most likely outcomes for FanDuel is Mavs in 5 to just win these next 2.
Yeah,
I would take Mavs in 6 at plus 360 if you missed the boat here on betting them pre-series. I wish I bet them after game 1 again. But they're now minus 230 to wrap this up because people think Utah is already looking at the offseason.
Game 3 here on this Saturday slate, and game 3 in the series for Boston and Brooklyn. We are now in Brooklyn in this one, Nate. I don't want to, no disrespect meant to any other series, specifically probably that Memphis and Minnesota series. This is the one people still want to watch. Memphis, Minnesota has been wild, and you had to make sure you watch different 20-point comebacks from Memphis to really enjoy that one. But this series has, 4 all-stars, 2 of the best offensive players of the last 20 generations, probably a top 10 player all time in KD. So it's a series that we want to see. It's a little bit of a, not necessarily a torch passing. KD's not going anywhere, but there's been a next step taken, and Jason Tatum's no one's little brother anymore. And he's no sort of secondary, KD light or anything like that. It's not just him at this point. Obviously, you've got to love what you're seeing from your C's. But this is game 3, and to a degree, you can make the case that the series doesn't start till a home team loses, right? And they were supposed to take care of business. That theory is also predicated on a team having home court advantage. I don't personally know any Brooklyn Nets fans. I don't think you do, and you even live on the East Coast still. So what are we expecting here in game 3?
Yeah, I mean, the crowd could be pretty evenly split on a Saturday evening. Yep. Plenty of people will have bought out those tickets who are Celtics fans. But, I mean, the first thing I'm looking at is positive regression from Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, who you cannot expect to play that bad again. And I don't think ever again. And I'm sticking by my guns. I mean, that's the theme with all these videos here on Saturday. I like Nets over 111 in game 2 because of those 2 guys and what they are capable of doing in the face of even the best defense. And it's 112 for this game as we go back to Brooklyn. They still have a 126 offensive rating with those 2 guys on the floor. And game 2 is on pace for definitely for over. I mean, the total is around 226. Heartbreaking if you teased it down like myself, and it finished at 221. But I mean, the Nets were on pace for 232, the 2 teams at least. And then the Nets after 0 field goals over a 7-minute stretch in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
KD, it's like the Monstars took his talent. Yeah, it was just like he dribbles the ball off his foot. He doesn't know what's going on. Yeah. He looked rattled by the Celtics' physical defense. I mean, that's the storyline, right? That's the big headline that, refs read papers too, though, Josh. And the refs are going to be like, all right, what are they doing to KD off the ball exactly? All right. And you will get a little bit of home court advantage from the officials and from the fact that you're down 2-0 in the series that everybody wants to watch. I'm not saying the NBA tips the refs anymore.
No.
No. Keep their games, keep the series close. But, I mean, the Nets don't need that much help. Like, we put it after game 1. Durant did not play up to his standard, and the Celtics needed a miracle buzzer beater. In game 2, they both didn't play up to their standard. The Celtics still needed to come back and pull away. They're wearing these 2 guys down, but Brooklyn came out and did everything you needed from their role players. Bruce Brown, Goran Dragic, 41 points on 16 for 26 field goal shooting. Seth Curry, 16 points. I like him to get over 11.5, by the way, in this one.
Me too.
And Drummond and Claxton giving you the size and physicality you needed after getting crushed on the boards, absolutely even 36-36 in rebounds. Brooklyn had 2 more offensive rebounds than Boston. So, I mean, I think Steve Nash has found a little bit of a recipe in terms of putting the right lineups out there. It's just now on those 2 guys. And we knock him in another video for not having much X's and O's beyond those 2 guys scoring. But frankly, that's what this team is built to do. I mean, you can change the action of how they get the ball and how you free them up, but it's on KD and Kyrie to go make some shots. And I think they will in this game. That's why I like over, specifically the Nets over. And if you're having me tease it, I would go Celtics +7 to get that total down. Just because I don't think that the Celtics are going to lay down no matter what.
I'm just chuckling at the way you say, if you're going to have me tease it, it's like, dude, you're the number one teaser. You're having yourself do it for sure. But no, it's funny because I don't disagree with you in a lot of ways. I'm kind of looking at some live betting in this one. I don't know if this game theory will work and if this stat really, that sequence will back up is worth me unnecessarily. What I'm trying to say is in the first half, the Brooklyn Nets are very good. In the second half, they are not, at least in the first 2 games in Boston. And that at least tells me to a degree that the 2-man offense and relying on these guys to play 40 plus minutes plus having combined usage rates near 70%. They're exhausted. Plus, Kate, this is where we give Boston and the kudos is they're chipping the crap out of him, right? Every possession, whether he's on offense or has the ball or not, he's getting clipped. He's having to run around screens, whoever is guarding him. I mean, he doesn't matter who he's guarding. If he's guarding, Al Horford, they're going to run Al Horford off of a couple screens. It doesn't matter, right? Because they just want that action to keep KD off balance. He is a thin guy. I'm not saying like he can't handle and hang. He's already played enough years in this league at the highest level that he gets the respect of being strong enough to play through anything. But when the game plan is that, combined with the fact that the usage rate between the 2 of them is what it is. I mean, they have a -20 rating. They have a -20 rating in the second half, combined in these first 2 games, a +12 in the first half. And it's like you said, they came out and the game plan was working. And that might be scary to some Nets fans that everything's been working to a degree, or certain things have been working, or at least in game 1, you get 39 points from Kyrie. You get a combined output from Goran Dragic and Bruce Brown. That was probably pretty unexpected as well. And then, you still, lose that game on a buzzer beater and need to come back, whatever. Then in game 2, you look at it and you go, we had a 15-point lead in the second quarter, and it just blew by us. It just went away. And I guess where I'm at too is I do like some points in this one. I think the Celtics defense, while it's not necessarily going to be limited because of a loud Brooklyn crowd, it is fueled in some way by an incredibly loud Boston crowd, right? And that lack of that has to at least have that regression on defense back to the mean for them as well. But it should be noted, they still are the best defensive team in the league and have been since basically January 1st. And so it's not like they're incapable of it, but you got to put your money on in the third game after 2 bad performances from 2 of the best offensive players in the last 20 years. Like I said, you've got to put your money on them to have a bounce back.
Yes. And that's why I do like also Durant to lead the series in scoring at +185. Those 3 guys, him and Kyrie and Tatum, are basically all at 50 points right now. And with Durant playing the 2 worst playoff games of his life. So, I mean, who's gonna have some positive regression here? Interesting you say that about the Celtics feeding off the crowd. I was stunned to look up their splits since January 25th when they became this juggernaut. They have the exact same points per game, pace, offensive rating, and defensive rating, home and away. They are just good. Really? But they are 12-8 to the over when they're listed as underdogs, covering by going over by 6. And 16-7 against the spread as road favorites. Right. They're not favorites in this one, but no. So I do think that they still tend to go over in this type of situation, and more it is about the Nets maintaining that pace. I mean, we're talking about their struggle scoring in the fourth quarter. It's not like we're guaranteeing they're going to keep lighting it up. So you could still live bet it under before that fourth quarter, because the Celtics also struggle to score down the stretch in close games. They play great defense. But I think we're once again going to be in the second or third looking at an adjusted total around 230. And I think this time we won't fall so far short because the Nets aren't going to be that bad down the stretch. And then zooming out at the series a little bit, I mean, Ben Simmons probably coming back in game 4. That's not a huge chess. I mean, it could. It's a huge wild card, really. And I think that just gives the Nets a little sliver of hope to say, look, if we win this game, then we have a different angle to throw at Tatum. We have a different player to throw out there. Maybe we even it up, and then it's anybody's ball game. And I think the way you bet that is being like, look, the Celtics aren't going to sweep. They're probably not going to win in 5. Celtics in 6 is plus 460, is one of the most profitable bets you can bet here. And I think they'll need at least that many to get rid of the Nets. In Celtics in 7 plus 410. Just for this series to go 7, still plus 210 if you think the Nets can still pull it out. Vegas still loves them, of course, plus 370 for the Nets to win in 6 or 7. So, there's some angles to look at, but I do think this will go down to the wire, this whole series.
Yeah, just to touch on that point briefly real quick. I thought this series was going 7 when it started. We said before game 2, the Nets could very well lose this series, and I still wouldn't feel great just placing a bet on the Celtics to win this series straight up. I would feel better actually putting money on 7 games right now still, honestly, because I do think that the Nets win game 3. If they don't, and I'm proven wrong, it's not going to shock me because I do believe in this Celtics team. But I'm going with I'm going to need to see Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving shot dead before I'm just going to bet against them at this point. And like I said, I'm not going to be shocked. I don't hate your idea of a tease because of the fact that even though Brooklyn could win, or just taking a Brooklyn money line bet, I guess is what I'm saying. Perhaps player performance double just to keep that juice on those bets and keep my odds where I want them. But the other thing I was going to say is it's interesting because we're not just a podcast about the NBA. We're a betting podcast about the NBA. But if we were just a regular podcast about the NBA, there's no way we would have gone 12 minutes in this episode without talking about Sen Bimmons already. You know what I mean? And that's because it's just fodder to, at this point, he's not going to impact the game in a way that's going to affect how I bet it. Let's put it that way. And I think at the most he's getting 15 minutes. He might have a great 15 minutes. But it's not like this isn't even. He has barely practiced, if at all, right? And this isn't practice. This isn't a preseason game. This isn't even a regular season game. Hell, this isn't even a regular postseason game. This is essentially a conference finals game at the level of play that we're talking about here. You think he's going to come in after not playing for 10 months in any type of professional basketball scenario and just be super impactful? Like it ain't going to happen. So I don't think they expect it to happen. I think him coming back is to see if they can continue on and maybe there's a spark, but like I like to say, like, I love playing fantasy football or even basketball, just fantasy sports, and having a guy on the bench who starts the season hurt. But it's a nice little uplift to your team that you're like, hey, I still have like 25 points a game coming to me when this dude comes off the bench. That ain't Ben Simmons. It's just been too long, and this is not the time that you bring in that dude who's the reserve to be the spark when everything else is working a different way. So I like the money line here. I like points in the first half. I'm not gonna bet a total here. I'm probably gonna bet a first half total and get an over there rather than the game, because I still feel like there's some wear down opportunity and likelihood for the Nets against an incredibly good defensive Boston Celtics team. Let's finish up with that one. Obviously, we got Memphis, Minnesota. One more game in Minnesota here. Game 4. Game 3 was wild, dude. I don't know what to say about it. It was wild. I have some thoughts on how I think it's relevant and how it'll impact what we see here moving forward in terms of some game theory, some game strategy from these coaches. But we've got a decently high total that I think that both of us are salivating at the prospect of betting an under on. So is that where you start here before looking at that 2.5 point spread?
If I have to bet on this wild card of a series, yes, I want the under once again, which hit very, very easily in the last two games. It's just because one of these two teams was just horribly inconsistent on offense. I do expect that to continue. I do think 232 is still too high in a playoff game, and that Memphis has figured out a lot of things on defense. It's just that they couldn't get their offense going early on against Minnesota. So we were going to go way under before they started going on that crazy comeback. I mean, it's interesting that the series now, Memphis in 5 is basically even money. Like, I guess the odds makers are kind of agreeing with our theory that just like the Grizz won the first and got swept out after that last year, they're going to do that to the Wolves. I don't know if I buy that, but I'm certainly not betting on Minnesota to cover what is now just +3 in this spot, because just from an X's and O's standpoint, Memphis has a lot of answers for their guys who are very limited. Interesting to just watch that game flow on Twitter, Josh, and just see once Memphis gets down 20, all the smoke starts to creep out about how, the Grizzlies regular season style doesn't work in the playoffs. Who cares if you have 11 guys if you can't play them in the playoffs? Well, they went to that depth. They unearthed Brandon Clark, Xavier Tillman, and just have shut down Cat in the last couple games. They've used a lot of Kyle Anderson on him too to just kind of take him out. And Anthony Edwards, also a 96 offensive rating since that amazing game 1.5 assists, 3.5 turnovers. They let D'Angelo Russell get off early, but I think he's, priority number 3. If they can contain those two guys up front, and they can, if they don't even humor playing Steven Adams on Cat. I mean, Clark and Tillman can both do a pretty good job on him. I don't think he's going to be that bad again, or that, that much of a back seat in terms of 17% usage rate these last two games. But Memphis, I mean, they got away with one with Ja Morant not even playing very well and coming back to win. And now I think they're going to be a little more free. Look, they got him in game 1 because of the rust. They almost got him in game 3 because it was an off night. But now they have the answers to the test. They're the stronger, faster, deeper team. And I do think, that they're going to win and probably keep it under just from their general ability to control the paint.
First of all, I feel a little bit seen. I literally have a memory in my head of like watching this game and it being 68-48 in the third quarter. And literally I remember thinking to myself, I guess their style of play doesn't work in the playoffs. Like 5.5 minutes later, there it's like 81-all or whatever. So yes, I was dumb as well. Thank you, Nate, for calling us idiots out who thought that. And I thought it for a brief minute, but whatever. Point is first of all, I love Brandon Clark. I have loved Brandon Clark. I've been waiting for him to get a few more minutes because I do think that if you have, he's huge, dude. He's massive and he's super athletic and quick. That's what you need to guard Cat. You need to not foul Triple J, which is why you can't give Jaren Jackson Jr. a defensive player of the year nod because he can't stay in the game and he can't stop fouling. He's averaging like 4 a game at the end of the regular season, and then this series he's having trouble staying on the floor. Still, though, actually, to be honest, I'm also going to defend myself and the fellow idiots who said that depth isn't necessarily what you need in the playoffs. They did unearth Brandon Clark to a degree, but they also they put him in a position where now in 19 minutes in this series, he's a part of the lineup that is a +30 net rating, and it is the lineup that's played now the most minutes. So kudos to Taylor Jenkins because he realized that obviously he too has NBA.com advanced stats, and so he was able to figure out that his lineup, that has that best net rating, that's playing the best for him, that we'll just call the lineup of death for them because it is full of versatile small and not, I say small, but just shorter than centers, but still big for their positions. You've got Ja, Dylan Brooks, Desmond Bain, Triple J, and Brandon Clark. I haven't even talked about Desmond Bain yet, who obviously carried them on offense when they had nothing going. But that lineup right there is a plus 31 net rating. You could also throw slow-mo Kyle Anderson, who we was a huge fan of we're a fan of the show, is a fan of him. Let's put it that way. But you throw slow-mo in there and take out Brandon Clark. You still have a guy who can guard Cat pretty well and next to Triple J and allow Triple J to come off of his man rather than needing to guard Cat one-on-one. But yeah, there's still a plus 28 in about 12 minutes of playing with that same lineup I mentioned, but you put in Kyle Anderson, for Brandon Clark. So either way, the point is, and it's weird because we're about to talk about Steven Adams not getting a single second of play, a coach's decision to not play in that game 3 there. And it's because in game 1, his net rate, he was giving up everything to Cat. That's why Cat went off. Basically, it was just a guy that couldn't get in front of him and is too flat-footed and big. Then you enter Xavier Tillman to the point that you said they kind of unearthed him, but obviously he's been getting time all season as well. But either way, the point is like he comes in and he's guarded Cat for a combined about 4 minutes or so. More than that. I'm sorry, I misdid that. It was about 7.5 minutes that he's guarded Cat in the last 2 games that we mentioned. Cat just being awful and only having 4 shot attempts in the last one. And so he's been guarding him the most since that time. And he's only given up 2 field goal attempts and 2 points at the line in total, right? And 0 for 2 from the field, like 2 boards in that time as well, no assists, et cetera, right? So we know what the difference is here. If Cat's not giving them 25 points, man, like we don't know what to get from them. Love Ant. And you won't hear us say anything bad about Ant Edwards. We tried to take him his props in after we did take him in the first game, and he paid off with those 36 points. We should have listened to our own advice where we talk about how inconsistent he is because he's still young, and there's certain elements of the game that he hasn't gotten used to, right? Like the way that LeBron James eventually got to being the most efficient playoff scorer ever. He learned things and picked things up right away. If Ant was really looking at things really closely, he would continue driving. I'm never going to be mad at someone for going, roughly, I think it was like 4 for 10 from 3 again. But the problem is he wasn't getting other types of efficient shots, and he wasn't controlling the game outside of making some threes here and there. And that's really what they need, because D'Lo's not that guy either. Despite hitting a few shots himself, he also took some really, really bad shots in moments that they needed to make sure they got a good bucket. And so, yeah, it's a team that plays well in spurts in terms of Minnesota. Really, really shown and personified by the way that Ant Edwards plays. It's just a little bit inconsistent on offense as of right now. I think he's going to continue to get better and smarter, but just it's playoff basketball right now. Taylor Jenkins is sort of outplaying Finch a bit, in my opinion, and it's in part because I think there's just too many guys to be able to throw at Cat because of that great depth that they have.
Yeah, and when you said Desmond Bain was the only one to get it going for Memphis, that made me start to feel even better about the under. I mean, yeah, that if you cut Ja out of the paint, if you get Jaren Jackson Jr. off the floor because he can't stop fouling, then Memphis doesn't have a lot of ways to beat you from the perimeter, and that is the knock on them. It's not that their style isn't right for the playoffs; it's just that it's a bit one-dimensional. So I do like the under. I mean, you have a good note in here that they've gone under at 5 of their last 6 on the road, scoring 15 points per game and getting 5 fewer free throw attempts per game in that span. And those unders are against teams that are usually money for the over: the Hawks, Rockets, Jazz, and Wolves. And the Spurs. And so, yeah, I think we're going to see playoff basketball where we don't get to 232. I think you can tease it up with another game. There's plenty of options on Saturday slate. Check out all our videos to see what some of those best options are. I would do Mavs Jazz over 208 with that. Yeah. That sounds wonderful to me.
Yeah, no, I'm with that. And final thing I would say there, just a bit of game theory, because I did take the time to look this up, so I'm going to freaking say it. But if you look at game 3, there's some pretty big disparities in the pace. Because there's also huge disparities in the net rating. So I just want to go through that real quick, because what this is going to indicate is when this game is played at a slower pace, Memphis is better. And I know that sounds weird because Memphis has had an offense that has been successful and fueled by points off turnovers, defensive rebounds, points in transition, and the like. But right now they're playing a team that is almost as good at that as they are. They're as athletic. They have similar types of guys that do similar types of things and similar types of versatility. So they also are but Memphis is a better version of it. They're just better overall. So they need to slow it down. If you look at the quarters 1 and 3 in the game 3 there, right? Those were the quarters that Minnesota just dominated them. They had net ratings of plus 75 in the first quarter. They had a net rating of plus 30 in the third quarter. The pace was 94 and 106. Right, their pace in the second quarter when Memphis had a plus 48 net rating was a 92, and then you look at quarter 4 again in the fourth there where it was a plus 52 net rating for Memphis, minus 52 for Minnesota, back down to a 94 pace. So that 106 pace in the third and about a 96 pace in the first, that was obviously an advantage for Minnesota there. And the reason that if Memphis is paying attention, which I trust Taylor Jenkins a ton, they are, they're going to continue to keep things slow, even though they are taking their slowest player, Steven Adams, off the floor at this point. And that is all the time that we have for you guys in this one and for these Saturday games here as we continue to roll along in the playoffs. As Nate mentioned a minute ago, make sure you are liked and subscribed so you continue to get all of these videos we're continuing to bring for you on the weekends as well. I saw my man David in there in the YouTube comments saying, please bring us weekend videos. We're coming through with what we said. So continue to follow along with us. And until we see you next, happy betting.